Hey, what is up guys, this is Zach, and recently I decided I wanted to start vlogging a little bit and I also needed a B cam. So I went out and I bought the Canon G7X. This camera is really an impressive little point and shoot, and I just thought I would give you my thoughts on it in this in-depth review. So without further ado, let's get right into my review of the Canon Powershot G7X. Alright, so let's start with facts and figures. This camera has a 1-inch sensor, which is not too much smaller than a Micro Four Thirds, but is actually a good amount smaller than a traditional DSLR sensor. It also features a 24-100mm f1.8 to 2.8 lens, which is actually quite a good deal when you put it into perspective. So in case you were wondering, the RX100 Mark Anything has the 24-70 f1.8 to 2.8 lens, so in my opinion, the Canon G7X takes the lead on this one. The G7X records 1920 by 1080p in both 30 and 60 FPS, which can be useful in some scenarios. It also has a surprisingly fast autofocus system with 31 focus points. It autofocuses during video recording, and as you can see here, it's actually pretty great. You can choose to track your face or just to focus on what's in the frame. But the one thing that really sold me on this camera was the screen. Not only does the screen flip 180 degrees to see yourself, but it's actually a touchscreen, which is a major edge over the RX100. The touchscreen is extremely useful when you need exact focus and don't want to wait for the camera to focus by itself. The touchscreen is actually really awesome, and in my opinion, makes this camera feel less like a camera and more like an upgraded smartphone. On the top of the camera, you have access to your exposure controls and your mode choice, and I tend to keep the exposure at 0 and my mode on video, as that's what I use it for most. It has a shutter button and a zoom ring, and as I said before, this camera goes all the way up to 100mm, and as you can see, it's actually a pretty useful zoom. On the right of the screen, you have a programmable button, your record button, and what I like to call the D-pad. Under there is your gallery and menu buttons, and these buttons are easy to click and I've yet to have a problem with them. On the bottom there's a battery compartment, and inside you'll have a 1250 mAh battery. It's not an amazing battery, but that's why I picked up 2 DSTE batteries for cheap. I'll leave them down in the description. Now quickly, just talking about battery life, I'll say it's actually pretty good, but I'm not too sure if you'd be able to get through a full day of using this camera non-stop. It does have a good battery life, but it's not amazing. Under the battery compartment you have your SD card slot, which I've never had a problem with, and the camera also has NFC support, but I'm yet to have gotten the chance to try and use it. On the right side there's a micro HDMI port and a mini USB port, which is only for transferring photos and videos. There's also no USB charging on this camera, which is a bit of a bummer considering that a lot of other cameras in this range has USB charging. But once again, that's why I decided to pick up just 2 extra batteries, so I didn't even have to worry about that. There's also a phone connection button, which I've only used once or twice, and it was pretty easy to use. You just connect to the camera's Wi-Fi and then go into the Canon app and transfer whatever you need. On the left side, there's a pop-up flash switch, which does its job just fine. The flash is partially rotatable and collapses into its slot. So now that you know the facts and figures and my opinions on this camera, I'm going to leave you with some sample clips and some of the best video that I've been able to capture with this camera. So as you can see, this camera does a beautiful job at recording video and has some really nice depth of field inside of this lens. I would definitely recommend this camera over the RX100 series unless you need the 4K on the Mark IV or you're some kind of Sony fanboy, if those even exist. Thanks so much for checking out my review of the Canon G7X, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.